This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
African Cup of Nations tournament begins with Egypt thrashing Zimbabwe in opening match. The United Nations says partnership with the EU is necessary to sustain resources for the peacekeeping mission in Mali. And Mauritania goes to the polls to elect a new president. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Collapse of Nigerian section of the Trans-West African Coastal Highway takes a serious toll on businesses between Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. And in sports, Uganda's Cranes aim to hit the ground running at the Africa Cup of Nations against the DR Congo. We start in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, where Chinese President Xi Jinping has concluded his two-day state visit to the neighboring country. During their talks, Xi and the DPRK leader Kim Jong-un hailed a new era for bilateral ties and mapped out plans for future collaboration.
President Xi Jinping's first visit to the DPRK was the first by the top Chinese leader in 14 years. It's also the fifth face-to-face meeting between the two leaders in the last 15 months. After a warm reception by thousands of local residents, Xi and Kim sat down at the Kamsunsan Palace of the Sun, where their talks focused on bilateral relations and regional concerns. The Chinese president stressed that Beijing is willing to offer assistance that could guarantee Pyongyang's appropriate internal security, while vowing to play an active and a constructive role in maintaining peace on the Korean peninsula. Xi spoke highly of Pyongyang's efforts to push forward the denuclearization of the peninsula and calls for a political settlement on the issue. Meanwhile, Kim says Xi's visit can help shape future relations and extend their unbreakable bond, just like one family. Kim added his country will remain patient regarding nuclear talks, even though the relevant party, with no name given, has failed to respond to his overtures. The meeting was followed by the welcome banquet and grand art performance. President Xi and his wife Peng Liyuan joined an audience of over 100,000 in the main Four Stadium, watching a variety of performances, including well-known DPRK, art gymnastics, orchestras, and a number of Chinese songs. Before wrapping up the tour, President Xi also paid a visit to the China-DPRK Friendship Tower, built in 1959, a symbol of the two neighbors' long-standing friendship. Xi's trip comes as China and the DPRK mark their 17th anniversary of diplomatic ties. At Friday's regular presser, the Chinese Foreign Ministry also spoke on the results of the friendly visit.
This is a friendly visit and a very successful one. During his meeting with Chairman Kim Jong-un, President Xi clearly pointed out some key areas for the further development of China-DPRK relations, including close high-level exchanges, strengthening strategic communication, and deepening cooperation in practical areas. He also stressed the importance to communicate on governance and economic construction.
The trip ended with Kim and his wife bidding Xi's delegation a fond farewell at Pyongyang Airport, where Xi also reviewed the DPRK's honor guard before boarding.
Let's go to Egypt, where the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations kicked off on Friday night, with host Egypt claiming 3 points against Zimbabwe in the tournament opener. The tournament, which was originally to be held in Cameroon before being shifted to Egypt under an expanded format of 24 teams, finally got underway at the Cairo International Stadium. A solitary strike from Mahmoud Trezeguet proved to be the difference between the two sides, as Mahia Mutua reports. Let's take a look.
After months of uncertainty, preparation, and adjustments to new formats and hosts, the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations finally got underway, with the most accomplished team in the tournament's history, Egypt, taking on four-time qualifiers Zimbabwe. With the hosts out to prove themselves both off and on the pitch, Javier Aguirre's Pharaohs had much to prove to the expectant home fans and a watching continent. Once the action got underway, it was the hosts and seven-time champions that threatened to break the deadlock early on. Liverpool forward Mohamed Salah was involved in attack time and again, teasing in crosses and setting up efforts, one of which saw Abdallah El Said's shot saved by Edmore Sibanda in goal before Mahmoud Trezeguet Hassan fired over. Zimbabwe struggled to find their footing in the tie, with midfield maestro Kama Biliat leading most of the efforts for the Warriors. But the deadlock was finally broken when Trezeguet shifted the ball onto his right foot and fired in the first goal of the tournament on 41 minutes, much to the delight of most of the 75,000-strong crowd in attendance. The former Anderlecht man, now with Kasimpasa in Turkey, finally rewarded for his efforts before the break. Fans urged Salah to bag a goal of his own, and the Champions League winner nearly doubled the hosts' lead, but his low shot was parried by a busy Sibanda. Neither side was able to find the net in the second half, as Egypt got their campaign off to a good start in the 32nd edition of the tournament.
The match went well in the first half in favor of Egypt, but in the second half, Egypt underperformed a little bit. But anyways, we thank God because we were able to finish the match without losing, as well as performing well in the first half. We hope that the next matches will be better.
It was an average performance in the first half, and in the second half they didn't really play as they could have. However, the biggest win today was in the opening ceremony. It was well organized. They made a real effort on that.
The Pharaohs next face DR Congo on Wednesday before rounding off their group matches against Uganda next week Sunday. Mahia Mutua, CGTN.
Well, CGTN's Adel El-Marki has been keeping tabs on the Africa Cup of Nations tournament and now joins us from Cairo. Adel, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Well, nail-biting moments for the host nation before the goal came along. How can you describe the mood in Cairo after the match? Adel?
Well, there was immense celebrations and joy that was spreading, and it was quite evident when we were seeing thousands of fans getting out of the stadium with a cheer. It was a very long, hectic day, of course, because it's a very long process. Most fans have spent around 10 hours in Cairo International Stadium to watch and attend early, to watch the opening ceremony and the match itself. And despite all that hectic procedures, just going back home with a joyful opening ceremony that was quite remarkable, and at least having Egypt scoring 1-0, this was quite a fascinating moment for everyone. People were looking forward to see Mo Salah scoring, but seeing him still playing live in front of them in Cairo Stadium was a joy enough to make them go home satisfied.
All right, Adel, I think Egypt should have scored a lot more goals, in my opinion. However, this event is being held at a time when the temperatures in Egypt are running high. Talk to us about how this is affecting players and the football fans in general.
Well, so far it has not affected players. FIFA and CAF have moved on to take just precautionary measures, and that is to, during matches, it will, if necessary, they will pause the matches in the middle of each play, in each of the halftime. So by the minute 30 and 75, they will give like 2 or 3 minutes break for the players to break. That is if the temperature is quite high. But we've seen most of the players and most of the teams that have been training here in Egypt for about 4 or 5 days at least, they were trying to dodge the peak hours of the heat. So most of the teams have pushed their training sessions near to sunset. So right before the evening starts here in Cairo, they will start their procedures, their trainings, and going to the stadiums, to their training facilities. That is if it was primarily scheduled in daytime. However, for those playing at night, there hasn't been any complaints or any concerns as well. So there is a general precaution about how the games will proceed under this heat. But overall, and most of the matches are right before the evening. The earliest is about 4 p.m. Local time here in Cairo, which is expected to be just right after the heat starts to break. So any case, the authorities, the CAF and the Egyptian Football Association, along with the organizing committee, are all taking and making sure to avoid the heat as much as possible.
All right, thank you for that insight. Let's talk about security, though. Egypt is hosting this tournament at a critical time for its own security and security of that region of the continent in general. How has the recent death of former President Mohamed Morsi impacted the security arrangements, Adel?
Well, security has been quite intense. Even before former President Morsi has passed away, the security was on its highest alert. The police forces, the Interior Ministry, along with the assistance of the military, have been putting on a very precise plan to avoid any possible risk or any threat to the safety and the security of fans, teams, and the entire competition as well. And the incident of him passing away just a few days before the event didn't change the security plan as much. And so far, there hasn't been any indication, any slight indication of a threat to the safety of the games. And nothing major has been reported within the Egyptian capital or any city that is hosting one of the main 6 stadiums that players will be taking their games at during the 2019 African Cup of Nations. So far, yes, there is a state of high alert, and there is quite a cautionary measure taken by all security measures, but there hasn't been any significant indication that the threat is imminent or there is something that could jeopardize the safety of the entire competition.
And finally, before I let you go, Adel, from your perspective, how do you see this tournament impacting the economy and even the politics of Egypt?
Well, in general, Egypt has been looking forward to such an event. First of all, it is, and that's the main purpose that is maybe more important to the authorities than the financial revenues to the competition itself, is that the success for Egypt to host 24 African national football teams with their fans in the biggest African Cup of Nations ever in history, to host it and move on it successfully and manage to have a perfect organization for it. That in itself is the main message that East Egypt is quite keen to ensure that will take place. And once that happens, this will definitely give a lot of strong indications to the safety of the tourism industry and the sector, and hopes that competition, once passes on successfully and peacefully, will be quite a testimony for how Egypt is now really welcome in practical after testing it on the ground during the AFCON, is how Egypt is now prepared to welcome back all its hosts and lift any remaining ban even on its travel, however slight these bans remain. And this is the significant most part of it, and that's why the country has not been saving any money to invest in the competition. It has been investing to make sure that it appears in the best way, rather than just focusing on the economical value and try to make it a profitable competition financially. That's not the prime target for Egypt.
All right, Adel Al-Maraki, always a pleasure talking to you. Excellent reporting. Thank you for your insights on the AFCON 2019 tournament. Moving on. At least 18 people have been killed in an attack in Nigeria's northwestern state of Zamfara. Gunmen stormed 3 communities while riding motorcycles. The 3 communities were near the Safe local government area. Zamfara's rural communities have seen a surge in deadly raids. An investigation into the attacks has been opened. Meanwhile, in Mali, after a 3-day visit by the UN and EU missions, the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations Jean-Pierre Lacroix noted the challenges facing the United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali. He says MINUSMA's partnership with the European Union has become even more necessary to sustain the mission.
I believe that this point must be stressed because the member states today are putting a lot of pressure on the resources of MINUSMA, human resources, budgetary resources, as there is pressure on the resources of all peacekeeping missions. So we will start to optimize the use of these resources, political, police and military ones. This situation makes the partnership with the European Union and other partners even more necessary.
This visit is taking place at a particularly important and serious moment, I may say, that the security situation is deteriorating in the center of Mali. on the side of the European Union, there is a real desire of how one can engage more and help Mali to get out of this crisis, to face this situation of violence, to restore stability, order, state development in central Mali.
Since 2009, women in South Sudan have been pushing to be allowed the right to own land. The country currently doesn't recognize women's right to do so. Well, that may soon be a thing of the past, with the country's Ministry of Gender, Child and Social Welfare stating recommendations will be incorporated into a draft of the national land policy.
In the state consultations done in 2009, women have called for their voices to be heard, and they had wanted their issues also to be part of the parcel of the drafting of the land policy, which was presented to the parliament. And in line with that, we say before the land policy is presented for another discussion, it will be appropriate to have the women recommendations.
Land is one of the root causes of conflict, so strengthening the legal framework and putting in place the mechanisms to peacefully resolve these types of disputes are crucial. And actually this falls squarely within UNMISS's mandate to protect civilians and promote human rights and help implement the peace agreement. So it's something that the Rule of Law Unit has been really engaged in over the last year with the Parliamentary Land Committee. And this land policy, if adopted, it's going to provide a much stronger framework for communities' rights, for women's rights, and for vulnerable groups.
Meanwhile, voting is currently underway as Mauritanians seek to elect a new president. The elections are expected to be the West African country's first peaceful transfer of power since 1960. President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz is stepping down after serving 2 5-year terms since he took power in 2008. 6 candidates are vying to replace the outgoing president. Among them, ruling party candidate Mohamed Ould Ghazouani, who is seen as the leading contender, with his main challenger expected to be former Prime Minister Sidi Mohamed Ould Boubacar. All right, you are watching Africa Live on CGT, and we've got a lot more news coming your way, including Organization for Economic Cooperation seeks to raise $2.7 trillion as meeting gets underway in Abuja, Nigeria. And we take you to Ghana, where instructors are using yoga to help young women manage episodes of depression.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Staying in East Africa, every year from late July to August, tourists travel to the Mara in Kenya and the Serengeti in Tanzania to witness the wildebeest migration. The phenomenon, which has been described as one of the 7 modern wonders of the world, involves mainly wildebeest and zebras crossing from the Serengeti National Park and into Kenya in an age-old cycle. CDTN Wilkester Nyabwa has that report.
The Masai Mara is breathtaking in the rainy season. The grass is green and lush. Predators and prey alike prowl the fields of green. On the land and in the rivers, the animals revel in the weather. They are playful and indifferent to the stares of tourists who throng the Masai Mara. It is a beautiful time. And at the heart of it all is one of the 7 modern wonders of the world, the wildebeest migration from Tanzania's Serengeti National Park into Kenya's Masai Mara. There's a certain organization to the way in which the wildebeest migration occurs. First come the zebras. The wildebeest will follow the very same route across the river and into the Mara. It is a cycle as old as time. Every year, between June and October, over 1.5 million wildebeest, gazelles and zebras instinctively set off from Tanzania.
It's during the dry season, when there is no rainfall in the Serengeti National Reserve, they come here looking for greener pasture.
They find it across the Mara River on the Kenyan side, if they make it there. Crocodiles, lions, leopards and hyenas lie in wait, and these predators kill around 300,000 wildebeest every year. Others drown in the Mara River. The wildebeest which survive and make it to the Masai Mara must ensure the survival of their species.
This tends to be a mating, let me use that word, a mating ground for the wildebeest. They come here for mating and go back to Serengeti to give birth and raise their calves. So that has been the cycle, but mostly they come here in the month of August, stay on a good year, stay up to around early November or end of October, then go back to Tanzania.
The wildebeest know it's time to leave when the end of the year approaches and the grass on the Kenyan side dries up. Then they start their journey back across the river to Ngorongoro in Tanzania, where they will give birth to the calves they conceived. When the young ones have found their feet and the grass dries up on the Tanzanian side, the wildebeest will cross back into Kenya with their young in another spectacular migration, and the annual cycle will continue. Wilkisa Nyabwa, CGTN, in the Masai Mara, Kenya.
Developing 8, also known as the Organization for Economic Cooperation, are meeting in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, for an inaugural consultation on health and social protection program. The program is expected to raise up to $2.7 trillion in economic benefits for member countries to achieve sustainable development goals. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
This is the first consultative meeting of the D8 since the adoption of the Health and Social Protection Program in 2018. The organization has made progress in other sectors such as trade, food security, energy, transportation, and industrial cooperation. Trade between the D8 member states was around $68 billion in 2010. This time around, the organization is hoping to improve economic development and standards of living, as well as enhance its global visibility through healthcare delivery. They believe that the health of their citizens is directly connected to economic development and contribution to member countries' gross domestic product.
It's evident that health is a key economic stimulant, and in order to attain sustainable growth and development heading into the next decade, health and social protection are critical. It's anticipated that the effective implementation of our health and social protection agenda will realize huge economic benefits running into several billions of dollars and place our member countries on a clear path of attainment of sustainable development goals.
The Developing 8 is made up of countries that include Bangladesh, Egypt, Nigeria, Indonesia, Iran, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Turkey. The combined population of the 8 countries is about 1 billion, or close to 13% of the world's population. Member countries like Turkey have achieved up to 99% universal health coverage. Countries like Nigeria are still lagging behind, with not even 20%. The World Health Organization says it will offer technical support to member countries with consideration of their particularities.
The Health and Social Protection Program is another development mechanism for promoting human development, inclusive growth, poverty reduction, and the protection of healthcare rights of persons. When implemented as conceived, the program should enable us reach out to the vulnerable and the less privileged in our communities, especially the elderly, the women, the sick, the disabled, and those in dire need of healthcare and social protection.
Life expectancy for member countries is said to be 69.5 years. One of the goals of the program is to increase that by at least 4 years. Financial spending from member countries is said to be between 3 and 7% of their respective GDPs. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Still in Nigeria, where there have been deliberate efforts to increase yoga participation in the country. As the world celebrates International Yoga Day, Africa's most populous country owes it to an Indian instructor whose 12 years of work in the nation's capital is beginning to pay off. CGTN's Philly Haza has more on this story.
At this lakeside in Abuja, members of the Abuja yoga community practice their breathing and stretching. Basant Ram, the instructor here, has been teaching and promoting yoga in Nigeria for more than a decade now.
Yoga is an art which is help you to keep fit forever. Problems free, disease free, and sickness free. So your body can solve all the problem by itself, where you know how to use it.
Yoga is an ancient physical and mental practice which originated in India. It uses the body to increase flexibility and strength. June 21 is now recognized as the International Day of Yoga to promote its health benefits. And in Nigeria, the practice is gradually gaining popularity.
It's all about the science of well-being, a way to stay peaceful in mind and fit in body. The plan here is to get millions of Nigerians to practice yoga as a way of life.
And yoga enthusiasts here are seeing the benefits.
I feel something different. I can feel the oxygen right through my body. I feel light. And I want to encourage all Nigerians to try to practice yoga every day.
Subsequently, I'm going to get more involved in yoga, possibly have an instructor. It's actually a very cool form of exercise.
As part of his strategy to reach Nigeria's nearly 200 million population, Ram has been working with the Indian government to increase the number of professional instructors in the country.
We are always look all those students who loves yoga, who really serious about yoga. So we send them to India for training, and that training course should be sometime 1 month, sometime 2 months, sometime 1.5 months. And Indian government has certifying with a professional institute in India.
And as yoga stretches further into the country, it's hoped it will also encourage a healthier lifestyle to be adopted by many Nigerians. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
And in Ghana, yoga is gradually becoming a popular form of exercise as well. Well, as well as the physical benefits, instructors of the ancient practice say it is helping a lot of young women to manage episodes of depression. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rafai reports from Accra.
So your intention today could be you're love, you're kind.
Eyes closed, this yoga class begins with meditation. Darlene Amo started yoga studio in Accra 4 years ago. She says she's had to break down barriers to get Ghanaians interested in yoga as a form of exercise.
At the beginning, a lot of people didn't want to come for yoga because they thought it was going to take them away from their religion. So people ask, if I come for yoga, would I be a Buddhist? Would I levitate? Would I be a different person? But the thing is, yoga has nothing to do with religion.
Yoga began in India over 5,000 years ago. Since then, it has spread across the world and evolved. In Ghana, many people see it as an effective way of achieving mental, spiritual, and physical well-being.
It was good. The meditating part was really calm. I realized that I don't have much balance, but I'm going to work on that. And yeah, I liked it.
Yoga instructors believe yoga helps those who practice it have a balance in life. Amo says some women use yoga to deal with depression.
If you think about the world we live in now, where there's so much stress, there's so much competition going on in social media and stuff, people would need a place where they can feel zen and feel their self again and come back to their self. So yoga teaches you about yourself and your path in life. So I feel like with time, everybody's going to get there and would get into yoga.
It's really developing. You're starting to get a lot of people, of course, that are moving from other parts of the world, so they're already aware of yoga, so they're coming in and they're wanting, to have more yoga classes. Then you're having a lot of local Ghanaians who are really into fitness or just into a new alternative as far as getting fit or even spirituality.
For these women, yoga is more than just physical poses. It's also an opportunity to meet new friends.
The first go at yoga for a beginner like me can be difficult because of the initial lack of flexibility or strength. But trainers here say with constant practice, it gets easier and the benefits become obvious. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
The news continues on Africa Live. Let's take a look at our business headlines. Collapse of Nigerian section of the Trans-West African Coastal Highway takes a serious toll on businesses between Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. And we show you how Tunisia plans to reevaluate its tourism industry.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Chinese companies have signed a deal with their South African counterparts to buy South African goods for the Chinese market, promoting a win-win cooperation for common development of both nations. CGTN's Asta Tal has more.
A delegation of companies from the People's Republic of China witnessed the signing of 50 agreements. South Africa's Trade and Industry Minister spoke on behalf of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Today, a number of companies from the People's Republic of China signed commitments and contracts with South African counterparts to buy South African goods for the Chinese markets. These goods range from mining products to agriculture to industrial products. And it's goods that China needs, but it's also an opportunity for South Africa to grow our economy.
The new deal is set to boost the bilateral relations between the two nations.
As an ambassador to South Africa, I recognize the voice from the people, the call of the people, the speech by His Excellency. This country is ready to take action to attract more investors to come here, to increase the production, to create more jobs to our people. 55% of the people living under poverty is unfair, it's not good. And 27% more of unemployment, that is very unique. But I'm very proud to say this president is the right president at the right time to lead this country to the right direction.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner. An invitation has been extended to South Africa to attend the China International Import Expo in Shanghai, further increasing trade, policy, and political ties. Astatal, CGTN.
The Nigerian section of the Trans-West African Coastal Highway, which connects the city of Lagos, Nigeria with Dakar, Senegal, is in total collapse. The situation is taking a serious toll on businesses between Nigeria and neighboring Benin Republic and Togo. Residents of the area are also demanding urgent action on the state of the highway. Here is CGTN's Deji Badmus with that story.
It's difficult to believe this is the busiest international highway in Nigeria, but that is what it is. Also known as Badagry Road in Lagos, it is the major border route between Nigeria and Benin Republic, linking up with Togo, Ghana, and as far as Senegal. It's also a major trading route. But traveling on this road is a nightmare everyone loves to avoid, but hardly can. The road has been in this terrible condition for a very long time now. Many businesses along the corridor have collapsed as a result.
It has claimed lives. Industries have folded and some are still folding. We have recorded a series of accidents, insecurity, robbery. You will find out that in terms of tourism, a lot is not being done. And a road that up to September, 460 billion has been spent. So Badagry Way, which should serve as a leeway for business to thrive, has become a gateway of pain and anguish.
Joe Dumaki and her group have been holding series of rallies like this one to pressure the government to fix the road. They say the state of the road is a disgrace that shouldn't be allowed to continue.
We don't have any other choice but tell the government to declare a state of emergency. A sort of economic war is going on in Badagry. Our transporters, most of their vehicles have become rickety, and most of our market women cannot even sell a lot of the things that they produce as a result of bad roads. There is no government that can progress if a quarter of its population is left behind. We have up to 15 million people that reside in this axis of the country.
Extensive reconstruction of the 61-kilometer 10-lane expressway began in 2010, but a lingering funding challenge has compelled the contractor to stop work. Lagos State authorities now say the reconstruction work would soon resume.
The contractor will move into site before the end of this month. And I'm still relaying that in the month of June, where we should be closing out the discussions with the contractor over the weekend, early next week. And we're hoping that, barring any unforeseen circumstance, they should still be moving in another 2 to 3 weeks' time, meaning that the construction, the cleanup and the construction of the Badagry Express Road will return back in earnest.
The residents of Badagry and indeed the entire Lagos State would be holding the governor to account on that pledge. Bottom line is that how quickly funding is made available for the contractor to return to site would ensure that the road does not deteriorate further and add to the misery of the millions who still use it every day. Deji Badmo, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, China's trade partnership with Africa continues to grow. Flowers from Ethiopia are making their way onto the Chinese market. Astatal follows how the perfect rose finds its way from Ethiopia all the way to China.
With an average annual temperature of 16 degrees Celsius, Ethiopia has a perfect climate for growing flowers. The country is currently Africa's second largest flower exporter. The flowers grown here are largely sold in Europe and the US, but China has also grown as a considerable market. Zhang Wenda came to Ethiopia 5 years ago to work in the flower trade. Here he found a variety of roses popular with the Chinese market. The flowers are packed and transported to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, before landing in China.
Ethiopia has developed a very comprehensive floral industry covering planting, packaging, and cold chain transportation.
Ethiopia is the world's fourth largest exporter of flowers, with China-Africa trade routes continuing to expand. Astatal, CGTN.
Tunisia's direct contribution to the GDP is usually calculated by measuring the sum of the added values achieved by the sectors of the hotel. However, it excludes other areas directly related to tourism. Experts consider that the method adopted does not reflect the real value of this sector, which employs over 1 million people. CGTN's Adnan Shawalshi has the details.
According to a study on the real position of the tourism sector in the national economy, carried out by the Tunisian government and the private sector, the direct and indirect contribution of Tunisian tourism to gross domestic product GDP is expected to reach 14.2% in 2019.
Over the past 3 years, we have invested massively in security to provide a favorable climate for boosting tourism activity. All European countries have lifted travel bans to Tunisia. Now, there are positive indicators.
The study showed that the sector's contribution, according to the new calculation method, is estimated at 13.8% of GDP for the year 2018, against a forecast of 6.72%. The government now aims to improve quality of service to further boost this vital sector.
We plan to develop tourism by implementing new reforms in training, quality of service, infrastructure and logistics. There is a new vision to increase tourism contribution to the GDP by attracting more tourists and diversifying activities, while creating jobs and developing inner regions.
Experts emphasize the need to settle for the direct effects of tourism when calculating indicators, but also indirect ones to determine the sector's position in the national economy.
The objective is to provide professionals with a dashboard to observe the evolution and efficiency of tourism in Tunisia. The crisis, which hit the country in the past, made tourism professionals fragile. Now, more hotels are opening. Tourism revival is underway.
Tunisian authorities say it is important to set up a calculation mechanism dedicated to the subsectors by bringing together all the components of tourism to highlight the overall value added of this sector, which employs 9.4% of the workforce.
In 2015, millions of European tourists deserted Tunisia following a wave of terror attacks. More than 60 civilians died in the Bardo Museum and the beach resort of Sousse. Now that the security situation is improving, the North African state aims to attract over 9 million tourists this season. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more wonderful, amazing, and inspirational stories coming your way. Let's take a peek at a headline. Creativity transforms suburban South Africa into an art destination.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. A Ugandan snake conservationist is not only saving hundreds of reptiles from being killed along the shores of Lake Victoria, but he also plans to milk them for venom. Simon Kakito says he has rescued more than 300 snakes since founding his snake park in 2003. CGTN's Hilary Ayasiga reports.
Rocking its way to safety this time. But the African rock python is an endangered species. It's part because of attacks by humans.
Most of these are rehabilitated here. Now this one was beaten up by people in the community. That's why his eyes are blind now. Yeah, but it has fully healed. About 6 months, we are going to release it back to the wild.
There are 30 snakes at this farm. Most of them have been rescued from communities that wanted to kill them. Some of them have wounds and they are now being treated before releasing them back into the wild. They keep reptiles like pythons, black mamba, the Egyptian cobra, tortoises, and monitor lizards. Mr. Kaketo says if not protected, these reptiles could face extinction.
Every time I have a call for a snake or a snake problem, because we call them problem animals, because when they interfere with the communities, it is not very good. Most of the people in the communities will feel scared or will want to hurt them. So trying to get them out of the communities and bringing them to a safer place like this one and releasing them when they're in natural habitats is quite rewarding for me.
The snake park has also developed into a learning center.
We are learning, but then again we are touring and seeing more things, and it really helps Uganda as a nation.
The park owners now hope to venture into venom milking to save lives.
We're trying to set up a society where in Uganda we can make our own antivenom. Most of the antivenom that works here is imported from South Africa. So, and we have a lot of venomous snakes. I would say 261 species of snakes here in Uganda. but we have never milked and made our own anti-venom. We actually have to ship it.
Venom milking is illegal in Uganda, but he plans to partner with hospitals and a government research department to carry out tests that might change that. And he believes that, however scared we are of a snake bite, we should be more scared about losing these species altogether. Hilary Isga, CGTN, Kampala.
Now that is an amazing story. And from one amazing story to another, the Johannesburg suburb of West Dean is fast turning into a little haven as a graffiti artist's playground. Prominent artists are provided with clean walls by residents to produce their best works of art. The area now boasts some of the most extensive collection of graffiti art in South Africa. The work is done under the umbrella of the West Dean Graffiti Project. Yolisa and Jamela has more.
West Dean Graffiti Project is a community project where residents donate their walls. Artists are given free rein regarding the concept of the art. Over 50 works by significant artists adorn the street walls of houses all over the suburb.
We're trying to also empower our community using art. Why are we putting ourselves into trouble? Let's now start communicating with the property owners of these buildings. Let's create a relationship with the people that we want to use their surfaces.
From our experience, a project like this is the first time it's been done, where people have voluntarily given their walls to graffiti artists to come and work on them and give of their time and their skills, their art. As you can see in West Dean, if you see all the art around, it is truly beautiful work. So no, it hasn't been done anywhere else as far as we know.
The walls have been covered with graffiti art by some of the most well-known artists in the country. Most of the participating residents have allowed great freedom to the artists. There's a captivating turnover of new walls and new art here in West Dean as residents allow artists to paint their walls, which is quite interesting because graffiti has had a bad reputation of being a subversive activity. For some, graffiti means unsightly scrawls and vandalism.
Graffiti is very controversial and it is not for everybody. There's obviously people who do not agree with graffiti, but what we have done is not the tagging, the true vandalism of graffiti. This is art, and this is an expression of art.
I think people started accepting graffiti as a form of art, but before they didn't know about graffiti, so they would look at us as rebels, like punks, people who are out there for no good, but at the end of the day, we were sharing our experiences with the community.
For all of the public's past disdain surrounding graffiti and street art here in South Africa, it's now becoming a commonly accepted art form. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in West Dean, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't go away, don't touch that dial. Let's take a sneak peek at the headline. Uganda's cranes aim to hit the ground running at the Africa Cup of